Is it safe to say that fructose is more detrimental to your health than glucose is?
In my opinion, I would say yes. And there's probably other opinions out there that might differ from mine, but it's because there's twofold things happening to you. If you just had glucose, it's just going to go into your blood and go into different places that need it or be put into storage. Now, too much glucose is obviously not good for your body either. It's going to be stored as fat eventually. Fructose puts an unnecessary burden on your liver and then gets put into your body that is either going to be stored as fat or be energy.
A lot of conversations over the last few years are, oh, well, this is lower on the glycemic index, lower on the glycemic index, which is a great thing. We want to make sure that our glucose levels aren't being spiked. But take it, for example, agave. Agave is low on the glycemic index, but that's because the fructose is super high. So I'd love to explore that. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of For Life, a wellness podcast by LifeSeasons. I'm your host, Niki Wolf, and today we are lucky to welcome Elizabeth to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So I work with you on a regular basis, but I'd love to get some insight to our listeners of not just what you do with LifeSeasons, but more specifically, your background in this field and how that's contributed or added value to what you're currently doing with the company.
Yeah, absolutely. So currently with the company, I'm on the marketing team, and we do a lot with, or I do a lot with the data analytics for all of our teams. And then recently we've gotten more into our market research and more into kind of the content creation a little bit. So my background, though, is in biological research. I have a degree in breeding biology and biotechnology for plant sciences. And then I did some of a master's for breeding genetics and genomics. So I did a lot of the research stuff for like 7 years of my life. It started in the USDA. I was in the ARS division studying in an entomology lab. We studied corn rootworms. And then later, I was in a microbiology lab, and we studied Arabidopsis there, more specifically iron deficiency within Arabidopsis. So big research background. And then coming into LifeSeasons, especially when it pertains to marketing, doing the market research behind all of our products and how it is going to be best portrayed to our customer. Also kind of getting into the science background of the formulations of our ingredients has been awesome. And then with the research, there's a big data component. And so that's really helped me with the data analytics that I help with in our company.
Absolutely. I think your background has been so beneficial for what you're currently doing. And even just our work together, the desire and the love for the research is so important, especially in our industry where we really do need to legitimize it and back it up with science. I think you do a fantastic job with that. But these worlds still seem a little bit like marketing and then this biology world. How did you get interested in that? Where did that come from?
Well, I was always like a science person. Ever since I was little, I was always doing weird science experiments, like just digging things up. I was just really interested
frogs.
I was more of like a worm person. I'd dissect worms. I'd find all these worms. It was just super weird, but super fun. I love doing it. But I was big into chemistry and big into biology. And then when I got to college, I thought, engineering is going to be my passion because I was also really interested in putting things together, taking them apart, seeing how things worked. But that kind of also came into my research background because I wanted to figure out, whatever research we were doing, there's a big component to figuring out how something works and then trying to make something else work based off of the research that you have. And then as it pertains to LifeSeasons, that was kind of an interesting journey because I was no longer in grad school, and then I came over to LifeSeasons. And I was eventually on the marketing team because of my background. They thought, the data analytics or the data that she did for her research is going to be really great for the data analytics that we need for our team. And I was just absolutely so excited because it was something of a new world for me. And it gave me the opportunity to learn something completely different. And that's something that I love to do. Any new topic, any new, interesting thing that I could just dive into, I love doing. And I always learning new things is a passion. So, I just got really excited to learn the world of marketing. And then there was all these other pieces that I could pull from my background to bring into marketing to give insights in different places. And it really ended up kind of really meshing really well.
Absolutely. I have firsthand experience that you do love to learn and you just dive in, which is so cool and even inspiring to be around. I mean, just the way that your brain works, it's kind of that N=1 experiment. We had a conversation not too long ago and we were talking about the food that she's eating. And again, we're in the season of blood sugar. So she was telling me and I was like, okay, I have a challenge for you. You need to get a CGM, continuous glucose monitor, and we need to try this out for a month. I know we threw that out there and there's some hurdles in order to get one. Where are we at in this journey of finding a CGM? Because you're all in. Once you get that, you're all in.
I'm so excited. Yeah. I've, especially like in the last couple of years, glucose has been something that's been increasingly interesting to me because, especially, lately I feel like everyone's interested in glucose and insulin because of some of the different products that have come out in pharma in the last year or two and have gained popularity. Glucose and insulin is so important in your body, and it really does regulate a ton of things that happen. Your energy, your hormones, it's so important to how you feel every single day. And so it's something that's so interesting to me. So when you brought up the continuous glucose monitor, I thought, if that's something I can get, I want it. I want it, and I want to know where my glucose is every single day, at any single second. I want to eat a taquito and see what it does. I want to eat a piece of chocolate cake, see what it does. Eat a salad, see what it does. Eat an apple. I just think that's so interesting. And I know the goal is to try to minimize the glucose spikes that you have throughout the day so that you can also minimize those drops in glucose that you have. So with that journey, it's been a little bit difficult because there are some companies that you can go to, but it's a really big entry price to kind of get the prescription or get the things that you need to do it. And then I did find one company that you can essentially pay for a prescription to get a continuous glucose monitor. That's been a little bit slow of a track. And so I'm kind of looking into other avenues of other places that I can get it, because although I do not have, metabolic syndrome or prediabetes or diabetes, which is what these things were made for, I do think it's really important to be aware of where your glucose levels are at and what foods affect your glucose levels. The more information you have on your health, the stronger you are in making your everyday decisions. And so I think it's something interesting that anyone should look into.
Couldn't agree more. And I think the last few years, things have shifted in our society that they are more readily available. It's been a number of years since I've had to use one, and I had to use it for medical reasons, but I know that there's companies out there now. So I'm curious to do some digging as well. And we're going to find you one.
Yeah.
One thing that I love about you, because I'm, when I know something, I just dive in. And so I would say I eat very healthy compared to the average person.
You do. I know you do. I know firsthand you eat very healthy.
While I'm eating a bowl of cottage cheese and simultaneously doing push-ups. I don't know. I'm in this weird push-up kick right now.
I love it.
But what I particularly love about you is I'm not a helpful experimenter. N=1, because I'm not going to go for that chocolate cake. I'm not going to have the taquito or taquito. Yeah. The Dorito, whatever it is. I'm just not going to do that. And that information is so helpful and beneficial. And so to see what is the chocolate cake doing to my numbers versus if I had a bowl of broccoli before and then had my chocolate cake, or if I had apple cider vinegar and then my chocolate cake, or if I had my chocolate cake and then moved afterwards, that information is so monumental, and
Totally.
It can, that research is, or the information is very beneficial. And so we're going to find you, we're going to figure out how we can get this CGM in your hands.
I would love that.
with all that being said, we've talked a lot about glucose. I think not just us. I think the conversation right now is a lot on glucose in just everywhere that's out there right now, which is great. And I think it's so important. But I don't think we're doing enough of conversation on fructose. And, I've read a little bit different pieces, where it's sourced from, what it's scientifically doing in the body. And I know you're going to lay it out, not really giving necessarily your opinion, but just here's the facts. And that's what we need. And it's up to you as the listener to determine if this is something that you want to include, if this is something you want to work on minimizing in your diet. But Elizabeth, let's break down fructose. What is it? How does it differ from other sugars?
Yeah, totally. So fructose is going to be a monosaccharide. It's something that is found in a lot of different things. Fructose is something that they think of as the fruit sugars, high fructose corn syrup. It's in a lot of different processed foods. But the difference between fructose and some of the other crosses is that it's metabolized a little bit differently. And it's metabolized in maybe not as healthy of a way. When you eat fructose, it's going to go into your body. It's going to be digested into your small intestine, but your body can't readily use fructose. It actually needs to be broken down to glucose in order to be used in the body. And the reason why this is an issue is because it needs to go into your liver and be processed in your liver. Now, if you eat too much fructose, it all needs to be processed somewhere, and it all needs to be processed in your liver. So this is actually something that can really overload your liver that already has a super important job in itself within your body. And when you overload your liver, you're going to have issues. But then once it is broken down into your liver, it is broken down into glucose that can then be put into the bloodstream to be used in different parts of your body.
Glucose, there's fructose, and there's also sucrose.
Yes.
And coming back to the liver, your liver is your largest internal organ, responsible for over 500 functions of the body. And not just that, I think most of us have liver toxicity, even if you don't drink. I'm sober, but even if you don't drink, there's genetic predisposition. So if you have the MTHFR mutation, that can lead to liver toxicity. But how about the lotions and the perfumes we put on our body? How about the pollution that we're breathing in, the foods that we're consuming, the hairspray, all these different things? We are just bombarded by toxins, and our liver is taking the hit of that. And so on top of all these different chemicals that we're putting on our body, even if you're doing your best to avoid them, we're still taking it in, maybe even secondhand. Adding fructose to the equation is only going to make things more difficult. So,
Absolutely.
Let's explore what's happening on how fructose is being metabolized. So you said it's broken down into glucose and it goes through the liver in processing. What are some of the consequences that could happen?
It can be anywhere from, acute liver toxicity, which you said can be caused by, many other things, not just fructose, but fructose is something that can really overload it, to something a lot more severe like non-alcoholic fatty liver. And that's going to happen when there's just too many things bombarding your liver that your liver cannot process. You get a really unhealthy fatty liver, and it can create a lot of different health issues down the line. And again, and they call it non-alcoholic fatty liver because it is from all of the other things. It's not, being an alcoholic and having a fatty liver from that. It is literally all of the other lifestyle choices you are making that is giving you a fatty liver. So that could be all of the outside carcinogens that you're putting on your body, as well as all of the different foods you are deciding to put inside your body. Unfortunately today, fructose, high fructose corn syrup is one of the most used, most unhealthy thing to have as like a preservative and a sweetener inside a lot of foods. And it's a really good idea to maybe try to minimize that because it is so ubiquitous almost at this point. It's something that we really need to pay attention to because it's something that's going to be so harmful to us if we continue to put that inside of our body. And then, along with all of the outside toxins that we're also putting inside of our body.
And unfortunately, it's not just showing up in sweet foods, which we do assume, okay, maybe they're putting fructose in these sweet foods. Almost every processed food, they are putting fructose because of how addictive fructose is. Chinese food, bread, cereals. I mean, I'm sure there's probably beef jerky. They are putting fructose in there because it works so addictive in the brain on the chemical receptors that it makes sense if you're a big business or, manufacturing food. How can we make this more addictive? Let's throw in some more fructose. So it's not just the fruit juices, the honey, the agave, sodas, dried fruit. It's all this processed food.
It is. And that's why, it is a really big preservative. It's also one of the cheapest sweeteners that you can have. And I think that's a big reason why we're finding it in all of the foods, because getting pure cane sugar or one of the other like sugar alternatives is going to be more expensive than just putting high fructose corn syrup in there. So it's actually more so of a business choice to cut costs in different places by replacing something that might be a little bit more healthy for something that is going to be cheaper. And it is actually, so there's been some studies that say that fructose and things with fructose in it can be addictive. And the reason why they say that is because of how it's metabolized. Similarly to how we drink alcohol, it is also metabolized in the liver. And there is something that is happening on that micro level within your liver, it being metabolized. There is something happening with like dopamine and serotonin in your body as those things are being metabolized in your liver. And that dopamine and serotonin is actually what's going to create that addictive factor. When you have dopamine releases when you eat sweet things, or you have that dopamine release when you have alcohol, that's something that your body will then start to crave. If it gets too much of it, then it wants it again. Your body loves dopamine. And so that's why it can almost become addictive. And that's why people are really addicted to, just having a sweet treat at the end of the night, or, just having a sweet treat anytime, or eating the fruit snacks for lunch, or, having the fruit juice in the morning. Those kind of little dopamine hits that you have from eating that fructose throughout the day. It's that feel good hormone that your body starts to crave. It's something that makes you feel comfortable. So there are a bunch of studies out there that do lead to maybe the conclusion that fructose can be just as addictive as alcohol, which is kind of a scary thing because it is also so harmful for your body. But, and it's something that we need to manage. So, and you need to make those conscious choices that maybe aren't so easy for everyone every single day, to put better things in your body to make those healthier choices.
I'd almost argue. So my husband and I have worked in the addiction field for a number of years. He works in his sphere, and I have a background, personally, in just different addiction conversations. But when we talk about the difference between food addiction and, drug addiction, some argue that food is almost more difficult because it's not like you can completely cold turkey stop it. Whereas alcohol and drugs, you can completely stop it. So that even levels it up and makes it even more challenging because you still have to be consuming food. You still have to be making these choices. Mm-hmm. You can't just completely shove it out of the way. And so then on top of that, it's just a way that these companies can leverage and make their products even more addictive.
That's true. And I almost think it's, I feel like there's maybe two thoughts here. There's like the thought that maybe they're putting this in their food because they want people to become addicted to it and continue to purchase it. And then there's the thought that they, as a company, are wanting to cut costs and be richer as a company. So they choose poor ingredients to put into their foods. I mean, because I think realistically, all of those foods that have that high fructose in there could be swapped out with an alternative that would be healthier for your body, but it's going to be more expensive and they don't want to do that. And so they decide to make all these poor alternative choices, and then that is then mass produced. And like you said, food can be potentially more addictive than drugs and alcohol because, well, it's more socially acceptable to eat a piece of chocolate cake than to do drugs or alcohol, And so because it's more socially acceptable, there's not going to be as many people who are going to say like, hey, I don't think that's a good idea. Or, hey, I'm going to get this chocolate cake out of your house, because then we kind of get into that PC range of, you can't be policing somebody's food. It's their choice. It's their body. They want to eat that cake. You should let them live their life, let them be happy. But we're not really thinking about happiness is one thing, but health is totally different. And those two things aren't always in line with each other, unfortunately.
No, I completely agree. And it's a hard conversation to have. And I think ultimately we have to take our health into our own hands, and, we can do our research. We can, go to our doctors and stuff, but ultimately this is on our hands, and
right.
We have to take responsibility for it. Now, you mentioned something earlier. We're talking fructose, but one thing I think we were talking off air, the glycemic index, because we've focused a lot of conversation, not you and I, but a lot of conversations over the last few years are, this is lower on the glycemic index, which is a great thing. We want to make sure that our glucose levels aren't being spiked. But take it, for example, agave. Agave is low on the glycemic index, but that's because the fructose is super high. So I'd love to explore that.
Yeah. So the glycemic index is so interesting, and it's actually a little bit misleading. You always assume that things that are lower on the glycemic index are maybe better for you, because you do want to maintain more of you want to avoid those glycemic index or glycemic spikes throughout the day. But fructose is something that has a lower glycemic index. So if we were to look at sucrose and glucose, the difference between fructose, glucose, and sucrose is, we talked about fructose, which is a monosaccharide that needs to be broken down by the liver into glucose.
So I just want to pause you real quick. So when you say monosaccharide, for the lay listener, I've always kind of used like a pearl necklace as an analogy. Mm-hmm. So, an individual pearl would be a monosaccharide.
It's an individual molecule. So it does not need to be broken down any further than it currently is.
So it would be one of the pearls.
Yes.
Now, would you say that glucose would be a chain of pearls, or that's more of your fiber and starch is going to be the chain of pearls? How does that differentiate with glucose or sucrose? And I know that that's my analogy, so I don't know.
No, that's a great question.
I don't know if that works.
So fructose and glucose, they're both monosaccharides. And so they're both single molecules that do not need to be broken down any further, but they are digested differently, and the access that our body, the way that it's access to our body is different. So fructose, like we said, it's going to go into the small intestine, and then it needs to go to the liver to be broken down to glucose. Glucose is it doesn't need to be broken down or metabolized anywhere else. It can actually just be absorbed into the small intestine and go directly into the bloodstream to go to your muscles or your brain or whatever needs that ATP at that moment, or it can go into storage to be used for energy or ATP later. Now, sucrose is actually just a scientific term for table sugar, and that is a disaccharide. So a disaccharide is going to just be two molecules. Now those two molecules, one is fructose and the other one is glucose. So it's 50% glucose, 50% fructose. So whenever you see anything with table sugar in it, or sucrose in it, just know that it is going to be partially glucose and partially sucrose, or partially fructose. Now, back to the glycemic index. We're going to have glucose at the very top, because that's something that can be immediately absorbed into your bloodstream. And that's what's going to send your glucose levels up, because it can be immediately absorbed. Sucrose is going to be slightly lower on the glycemic index because it's got fructose and glucose. So the glucose is going to be immediately absorbed, but 50% of the sucrose is going to have to go to the liver to be metabolized and then go to glucose. And then fructose is actually at the very bottom because it cannot go into your blood immediately. It needs to go into the liver, get metabolized there, turned into glucose, and then can go into your bloodstream. So when you look at your glucose levels, you're going to see a spike with glucose. You're going to see a less of a spike with sucrose, and you're going to see a latent spike with fructose because it needs to be transformed and then turned into glucose. So you're not going to see that big of a spike, but you got to think, I might not be getting a glucose spike right now from this, but I am putting an unnecessary burden on my liver right now.
Okay, fantastic way of breaking that down. Is it safe to say that fructose is more detrimental to your health than glucose is?
In my opinion, I would say yes. And there's probably other opinions out there that might differ from mine, but it's because there's twofold things happening to you. If you just had glucose, it's just going to go into your blood and go into different places that need it or be put into storage. Now, too much glucose is obviously not good for your body either. It's going to be stored as fat eventually. Fructose puts an unnecessary burden on your liver and then gets put into your body that is either going to be stored as fat or be energy. So whatever is, if you don't like glucose, then you're definitely not going to like fructose because it's doing the exact same thing as glucose, but first it's putting an unnecessary burden on your liver.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I sometimes people remind me that, Niki, not everybody is as diehard a health nut as you are. And so, if you're listening, you're like, what? I'm so confused with all this information. I thought glucose was bad and this, that. This conversation is for those who have really dove in a little bit deeper. And even if you haven't, just to be conscious and aware of what we're putting in our bodies, being more deliberate when you're maybe purchasing packaged or processed foods, turning around, checking out the label, seeing what's going on there. Are you noticing that sucrose is in there? And I'm curious, I know sugar does a really sneaky way of, it's hidden in so many things, sucrose being a name, glucose, obviously fructose. Are there other, well, I guess I can look it up, do you know other names that they can go by?
It's really just going to be like you're turning your food around and you're looking at the ingredients in it. You're more likely to just see sugar or high fructose corn syrup. Those are the two things that you're really going to see. And when we talk about glucose, I can't think of anything right now. I don't know if there is a product that just has straight glucose in it. There probably is. Couldn't tell you what it is. But glucose is something that's always going to be necessary in your body. It's maybe won't be found straight in a food. But whenever you eat carbohydrates, it's eventually going to be turned into glucose. So carbohydrates could be the only other ingredient or the only other thing in your nutrient facts that might be considered also a sugar because it will eventually be turned into glucose later.
That's a key thing that you just mentioned. And I think a lot of individuals, especially with clients that I work with, they're like, I don't eat a lot of sugars. If you are eating carbohydrates, that is getting broken down into sugar. Just like protein gets broken down to amino acids, you have your fats that get broken down into fatty acids, you have your carbohydrates that get broken down into glucose. And I just did a quick thing because I knew that there was these are different names that you might read on the back of a box that might not necessarily say sugar. Now, a lot of these do, but I'll just kind of list off a few of them. And actually, this does make me want to talk about dextrose too, but agave, beet sugar, cane juice, coconut sugar, corn syrup, dextrose, dehydrated cane juice, fructose, glucose, high fructose, corn syrup, honey, icing sugar, lactose, maltose, nectar, sorghum. All of these are different forms or different names of sugar that can appear on your food label. So just becoming a little bit more conscious of what's going on. Now, the impact on the blood sugar and our insulin resistance. So how does fructose consumption affect our blood sugar levels? What's happening internally?
That's a great question. So as far as our blood sugar is concerned, we're not going to, again, really see that high of blood sugar afterwards because it's not directly going into our bloodstream. You might see a latent effect a couple hours later after it has been metabolized by your liver.
Okay, that makes sense. And again, it's putting more work on the liver. So yes. I wonder if you look at somebody with fatty liver disease, there's probably a correlation that they are consuming a high amount of fructose in their diet.
Yeah, people that do have fatty liver disease, and that's why they do kind of like to categorize it by non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and alcoholic fatty liver disease, or if you just call it fatty liver disease, it's a really good indication that you're dealing with one of two things. Somebody that has an alcohol issue that has, consumed copious amounts of alcohol for many, many years, or somebody that has had a really, really poor diet for many, many years. And when you think of like the different organs in your body, it's not just your liver that becomes fatty and has this fatty tissue. There are also other organs in your body when you eat too much fructose, or if you are just having like really poor lifestyle choices, not exercising, not eating healthy, not getting your recommended daily amount of, vegetables and fruits and fiber and protein, you're going to actually build additional fat on other organs. And all of that's going to culminate into health issues that are going to be really expensive to treat, if they are treatable at that point when you find them. And it's also going to, put burden on your family. Nobody wants to have a family member that's sick. So it's really something that I feel like everyone needs to pay attention to, especially because we're kind of having this rising epidemic of people that are struggling with metabolic issues, or metabolic syndrome, or having prediabetes, or being diagnosed with diabetes. And we're also seeing a growing number of people who are having Alzheimer's, which is now more and more being called type 3 diabetes. And it has to do with insulin resistance within your brain. And you don't really think about your brain using that much glucose or having insulin in there, but it does. But I do want to touch back really quick on dextrose. The difference between dextrose and glucose: dextrose is going to be the sugar that is found outside of the body, and glucose is going to be referred to the sugar in your bloodstream. So I just wanted to make that clarification.
Okay, that makes sense. And it's just like when you have glucose in the body and it's stored, it becomes glycogen. So it's kind of all the same thing, just a different name depending on where it's located.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, let's say we're listening and we do have some form of metabolic syndrome, whether that's in the diabetes family, pre-diabetic, or, we're just trying to improve our health. Where do we start? Because this can be very overwhelming. What are some strategies that we can implement? What do we pay attention to? How can we improve our health with all of this in mind?
That's a great question. So I want to say, and this is actually something, Niki, you told me, and it's actually something that I learned, I want to say when I was like in high school. Move your body after you eat. There is so many, I actually know a lot of other cultures that it's like a cultural thing that after you eat, you go on a walk as a family. Whoever you're with, you go move your body. Moving your body is actually really going to kind of pull your energy into your muscles as opposed to your digestive system. It's going to lower your blood sugar levels if they are spiking after a big meal. So I feel like that's going to be the first thing, is just start moving your body, whether it's after a meal or just regularly throughout the day, or exercising, once a day or even 3 times a week. And exercising can look different for everyone. It's not like we all have to be Niki and myself doing push-ups and weightlifting and doing all those things.
You guys can join us. We're doing a contest. I think we've kind of just brainstormed the idea starting in February.
Push-ups and planks.
Push-ups and planks. We'll throw out the details to you guys, and you guys are welcome to join us. One thing that I love that you mentioned, you said move your body. You didn't say fitness. You didn't say exercise. Movement, because I think we underestimate the power of just regular movement. There's something called NEAT. It's moving your body that doesn't necessarily involve a high intensity workout, running, biking. It's cleaning vigorously, vacuuming, standing, even sex, like having, intimate relationships. All of that stuff is moving your body. It's improving
it gets your blood
health.
Pumping.
It doesn't necessarily have to be this like exercise. And so just moving your body, somehow utilizing your muscles, going for a walk. I'll be honest, and again, this is just like I'm just an odd one. But after dinner, kind of in between dinner and when I go to bed, I have this thing called a berry bowl. And it's, we have our love of cottage cheese, Elizabeth and I. So it's cottage cheese, frozen berries, cinnamon, 100% dark chocolate. We can have a conversation on that. 100%. There's no sugar. For some people, it tastes like dirt. You get used to the taste, but you're getting the benefits, you're getting the fats, you're getting the benefits of the chocolate without any of the sugar.
Oh yeah.
And you're getting the chocolate flavor. You're not getting the sweet. You get chocolate. I cut up a half a protein bar. Trust me, this is going somewhere. And so I have this and I want to move my body, but it's like nighttime. This is when my husband and I wind down. We sit on the couch, we watch a show. I get one of those like booty bands, those resistant bands. It's a really hard one. Mm-hmm. I wrap it around above my knees and I just do these clamshells. Yes. Yeah. And this band is like the strongest band I've ever, it is like sewn in with clay and tar and cement. It is so strong. It's not one of those easy ones you can do. Like you are definitely working muscles.
You're working. You're
yes.
Sweating.
So my point is that maybe not sweating, but yes, you are working it, you feel it. And so it doesn't always have to be this intense thing, just something where you can move your body.
Totally.
I would say that's the laziest movement I can do while I'm sitting on the couch watching TV, but moving your body after you eat is so important. And I did do some reading, because I wasn't sure the time frame of when does the benefits end, like how far can you go after eating? I believe it's about 70 minutes is the maximum. So you want to move, which was significantly longer than I thought. I was always like,
great to know. Yeah. Because if you're like, I didn't start moving right after I ate or right after I finished eating. Well, you got a window. You got a pretty long window. That's time to clean up, burning calories, cleaning up. You know, the reasons why they say, like the 1950s housewife, why were they so skinny? It's because they were doing chores. They were mopping, they were sweeping, they were scrubbing the floor. They were doing all of these chores all the time. Like they were busy women doing so much all the time. And that's what they say, kept them thin is because they were just choring all day.
Okay. You just made a really good point because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the 50s is probably when processed food really was like on the peak. Like it was brand new. You could
it was
get
brand new
easy
technology. That was like the first time where they decided to kind of come out with that technology of like the high fructose corn syrup. And so it started there, but since then it has just skyrocketed. And if we look at kind of like obesity charts from like the 1950s to current, we're going to actually, you can put that graph next to how often fructose is used in everyday foods, and it's like a direct correlation. It's so interesting.
We definitely need to, I'm writing down to make sure that we include that. But one thing too is like when something is brand new, we all binge on it. Like it's the thing we dive into. And the fact that they are fit women, housewives, and this, these processed foods, high fructose syrup is brand new. These conveniences are new. They're probably consuming quite a bit, yet they can still maintain this figure. So there is something to be said to the movement afterwards because I'm sure they're consuming all that stuff. It's
after they're cleaning after dinner and they were moving nonstop. I mean, those women they were housewives that had all of the jobs, everything. And so I think there's a lot to be said there. I also feel like we can't neglect the fact that it was a different time and a body type was more desirable at that time. So if they did start to see weight gain, they maybe cut back on food altogether, which is not a healthy way to go about weight loss.
Thank you for being the devil's advocate. I think this is why podcasts are so beneficial to have too, because you can banter back and forth and have, a wider lens. Okay. So we will probably find that graph and include it in there.
Absolutely.
But kind of wrap everything up. Is there any other science or information that you feel is crucial for our listeners to pull away from understanding fructose, what it's doing to the body, and practical ways that we can approach fructose in our diets?
Well, the sentiment that I really want people to take away from this is we are going to continue to see glucose create more and more health issues as years go by. We have already seen the trends so far as metabolic syndrome, which is not just prediabetes. It's also going to be circulation issues, blood pressure issues, as well as your glucose issues. It's kind of like 5 issues wrapped into one that really puts a huge burden on your body. And then there's the prediabetes, which if they are not managed will turn into diabetes. And this really all just has to do with your lifestyle and the choices you're making every single day. And so knowing that and knowing that this epidemic is trending to get worse, I want everyone to kind of just like take a week, look at all of the, supplement facts, nutrition facts, drug facts on everything you eat for a week. And maybe just like write down, how much sugar is in this, how much high fructose corn syrup is in this. Just track it so that you're a little bit more aware of what you're putting into your body. Because now you kind of know from this podcast what it does to your body. Now it's kind of your turn to start tracking it yourself to see. And this is something my mom always did since I was a little girl, because when I was a little girl, I would love to go to McDonald's when we were on a road trip. And I always wanted a Cinnabon, and I'd get one. 10 minutes later, Mom, I have a stomach ache. And she's like, well, it's probably because you ate all the sugar. And then I was asleep for like 3 hours. And that happened every single time I ate a Cinnabon.
Hey, that's the trick to get a kid to sleep on a long road trip.
Yeah,
I need to pick up on that.
You can if you want to, but it was and she would always bring this up to me, since then. And she said, I want you to put together how you feel after you eat something. She said, you never felt good after you ate that Cinnabon. Why do you think so? Well, it's got a lot of sugar in it. And so she really wanted me to connect, how do I feel emotionally and physically to what did I just eat, or what did I just consume, or what did I not consume? Because if you're going to eat a lot of sugar and eat a lot of fat, your emotional and physical stability is not going to be as great the next couple hours. Also, if you don't eat at all, your emotional and physical stability is also not going to be great. So, it's not a fine line. There are so many options to make that are healthy for you. And so just making the correct ones and really kind of tying together, how does this make me feel? And what did I just eat? And start putting things in your body that make you feel good and make you feel good spiritually, mentally, physically, all of those things.
I appreciate that. And with so many trends going on, I think pressing into that idea of no matter what's a fad right now, no matter what you believe is truth, how does it make you feel? Do you have more energy? Is your skin clearer? Is, what's your mood like? Are you having these mood swings? If you can confidently say at the end of this meal or this snack that I feel better, then that's a good indicator that this is sitting right with you, because I think everybody's bodies and chemistry are a little bit more unique. Your macronutrient profile might look a little bit different than what is mine and what's going to work optimally for each other. But just becoming more conscious and aware of what we're putting in our body, and not just that, how our body is absorbing it and how do we feel with that. But Elizabeth, this was such a good conversation. I learned a lot from this. I've spent a good amount of my time understanding and researching glucose. So fructose is something new, but I think it's important to understand the science behind it, the impact. And if you are listening and you're not ready to give up your glucose or fructose or minimize it, 2 supplements from LifeSeasons that will be absolutely beneficial: glucose stability from LifeSeasons, and then purity. Because what we've learned from this is impurities are liver support, that the liver's taking a hit when we are consuming these levels of fructose. And so if we can give our liver the ingredients, dandelion artichoke, N-acetylcysteine, if we can give our liver the ingredients to thrive, to be able to remove the toxins efficiently, the healthier we can be. So glucose stability and purity, you can find it at lifeseasons.com or at any of your local health food stores in your area. Any last takeaways, Elizabeth?
The only last thing that I want to mention is, we talked a lot about fructose today and how it can put an unnecessary burden on your liver. I do want to clarify that fructose is sometimes called the fruit sugar, and I don't want you to think, don't eat any fruit anymore, because fruit is actually great for your body. It's got the polyphenols that are going to be really great for antioxidants in your body. It's got minerals and vitamins, and it's also got fiber in it. And that whole profile of the fiber, minerals, vitamins, polyphenols is going to be better for you than the detriment of the fructose that you are eating. The only thing to keep in mind is, everything in moderation. We don't want to be eating 17 peaches, okay? We want to eat one peach and then maybe some vegetables and, a healthy dinner. So I don't want you guys to think that there's no fructose that is healthy, because fruit is great for you. It's a wonderful snack, but we just want to keep everything balanced.
Absolutely. I love that. Speaking of balance, that you really round that out, because I think I can go very in one direction. So that is something that I think that is important. And if you are going to have that fruit, another way to optimize your health and balance it out is just making sure you're having fat and protein with it. So if you're going to have some cotton candy grapes, Elizabeth, what are you?
I love those.
They're so good. What are you going to eat with them? So making sure that if we're going to have our fruit, have some cottage cheese, have some slices of cheese, some salami, nut butter. Having it with some form of protein or fat is going to help optimize our well-being, help balance out our glucose and fructose spikes. So thank you so much for being here, Elizabeth. This was a fun conversation. Learned a lot.
Great time.
And we will have you back on to explore the latest and greatest with your CGM experiment.
Love it. Excited. Thank you so much.
Of course. Talk to you next time.